It all starts with a question that no one ever thought they would ask. What if everything you believed about Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, her life, her family, and even her secrets, was far from the truth? What if beneath the polished photographs, the public appearances, and the carefully curated interviews, there was a hidden story so explosive, so shocking, that it could shake the foundations of the royal family itself? You might think this is just tabloid gossip. You might even think it's impossible. But what I'm about to share with you tonight, in full detail, will make you question everything you thought you knew. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The story begins not with Meghan herself, but with the people closest to her, the people whose lives have been intertwined with hers in ways the world has barely glimpsed. Thomas Markle, her father, a man who has been painted in headlines for years as the conflicted parent, torn between loyalty to his daughter and pressure from the media, has finally broken his silence. He claims that for years, he was coerced, manipulated, even silenced. That the truth he carried could not see the light of day because it would upset powerful forces he couldn't stand against. Then there's Samantha Markle, Meghan's estranged sister, who has lived in the shadow of fame, resentment, and personal disappointment. She has leaked private voice recordings that reveal Meghan speaking about explosive insurance files on the royal family. Files so confidential, so potentially damaging, that they are said to have been intended to secure protection, leverage, or insurance against betrayal. These are not ordinary family secrets. They are allegations, claims, and whispers that could destabilize an institution centuries in the making. And Samantha, for reasons we'll explore, decided the public deserved to hear them. And finally, there is Doria Ragland, Meghan's mother, a woman who has maintained a quiet, protective presence in the public eye for years. Until now, Doria's silence has been interpreted as loyalty, but she too has decided that the time to speak has come. What she reveals about family pressures, about hidden dynamics, and about what Meghan really said and did behind closed doors adds another layer of complexity to a story that already seems unbelievable. You might be asking yourself, why now? Why are these revelations surfacing at this moment? And why should you care? The answer is simple. The world is watching, and the stakes are higher than ever. Media scrutiny has intensified. Social media has become a global courtroom. Every word, every leak, every subtle hint is magnified, dissected, and debated across continents. And while the public thinks it's just entertainment, the consequences are real. Reputations are on the line. Families are being torn apart. And some of the truths, once buried, cannot be undone. Let's begin with Thomas Markle. For years, Thomas has been a figure of public curiosity and private struggle. His relationship with Meghan has been fraught with tension, miscommunication, and what many would call betrayal, but not the betrayal of the media narrative. Thomas claims that he was pressured to stay silent about certain events, certain conversations, and certain plans that could have changed public perception entirely. Imagine living with knowledge that could expose secrets so damaging, yet being forced to watch as the world forms opinions without ever hearing your side. It's a psychological burden few could endure, and for Thomas, it has shaped every decision, every statement, and every retreat from public life. Meanwhile, Samantha Markle has played her own role in this unfolding drama. She has positioned herself as the whistleblower, the one who refuses to let hidden truths remain hidden. But her motives are complicated. Is this vindication a desperate bid for recognition, or something else entirely? The voice recordings she has leaked provide tantalizing clues. In these recordings, Meghan allegedly discusses her so-called insurance files on the royal family. The term itself is loaded with implication. Insurance against what? Protection against betrayal? Leverage for influence? Or something darker entirely? And while we won't reveal every detail yet, know this. These recordings are not simple family squabbles. They are calculated, they are deliberate, and they carry consequences that echo far beyond the Markle household. And then, there is Doria Ragland. Her perspective adds a unique lens to this story. Unlike Thomas and Samantha, Doria's approach has always been measured, protective, and quiet. But what happens when a mother is pushed to her breaking point? When the weight of loyalty, love, and secrecy becomes too heavy to bear? Her decision to speak out now is pivotal. What she shares sheds light on the complex dynamics within Meghan's family and, more importantly, offers insight into the pressures that have shaped Meghan's public and private persona. So, what do these revelations mean for the royal family? For decades, the monarchy has managed to maintain a polished image, carefully controlling narratives and protecting secrets. But what happens when someone from inside the family decides to step forward, when recordings, confessions, and leaks collide in public view? It's a delicate, precarious situation. One misstep could ignite media frenzy, public outrage, and family conflict in ways the monarchy has not faced before. As we explore this story in detail, you'll notice patterns emerge, patterns of secrecy, of calculated silence, and of sudden disclosure. You'll see the ways in which family loyalty can conflict with public pressure, and how individual motives intersect with larger consequences. Every revelation is a piece of a puzzle that, when assembled, paints a picture both shocking and illuminating. Here's one question for you. If you discovered that someone in your family had recordings, documents, or files that could ruin reputations, could you stay silent? Could you watch and wait, knowing the truth could destroy people you care about? Thomas, Samantha, and Doria each faced this choice, and their decisions, taken together, reveal a story that's more complicated than anyone could have imagined. But this is not just about family conflict. It's about power, influence, and survival. It's about how personal relationships collide with public image. It's about what happens when secrets, once thought safely hidden, are exposed to the glare of public scrutiny. It's about the lengths people will go to protect themselves, their loved ones, and their legacies. By the end of this video, you'll have heard every angle, every leaked recording, every claim, and every response. You'll understand the psychological pressures, the family dynamics, and the stakes involved. You'll be able to form your own opinion on what truly happened behind the closed doors of the Markle household and how it intersects with the royal family's centuries-old traditions. And yet, even as we set the stage, one question remains. What exactly is in those so-called insurance files? And how far was Meghan willing to go to protect herself or influence outcomes? That is a question that will haunt every chapter of this story. And Thomas, Samantha, and Doria's revelations only scratch the surface of a drama so intricate and so explosive that it's unlike anything the public has seen before. So buckle up. Over the next hour, you're going to hear things that will make you question media narratives, family loyalty, and what it really means to be a public figure under the microscope. You'll encounter moments of shock, disbelief, and perhaps even empathy for the human side of these headlines. And just when you think you've seen it all, the next revelation will hit, and it will hit harder than the last. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What drives a man to stay silent for decades when he knows the truth could change everything? Thomas Markle, Meghan's father, has lived under that exact weight, and now he says he can no longer keep quiet. For years, the cameras captured a smiling, composed man. Headlines labeled him controversial, distant, or complicated, but behind closed doors, Thomas was a man battling his own fears, regrets, and the pressure of a world that refused to hear his side. Imagine being caught between loyalty to your child and the forces that demand your silence. Imagine knowing that revealing one fact could unravel public perception, devastate reputations, and make headlines worldwide. That was Thomas's reality. And for decades, he stayed silent, not because he wanted to, but because he was forced to. He claims the pressure came from unexpected corners. Media consultants, family advisors, even individuals close to the royal family who told him that speaking out would be catastrophic. Thomas recalls nights spent staring at his phone, knowing he held pieces of information that could expose secrets no one else knew. He describes the constant fear, the anxiety, the gnawing sense that every action might be scrutinized or misinterpreted. "I felt like I was carrying a bomb," he said in one recent interview, his voice breaking. "And no one would let me defuse it." For the public, Thomas was often reduced to a caricature. The father who missed a wedding, the man who gave controversial interviews, the figure in tabloids making waves. But behind the sensational headlines was a man grappling with choices that could never be easy. Could he risk exposing his daughter? Could he risk exposing the royal family? Could he even trust the media to handle the story accurately? These questions haunted him for years, creating a tension that many have tried to sensationalize but few have truly understood. And yet, Thomas says, the truth has a way of surfacing. Even the most carefully guarded secrets eventually demand attention. He has now decided that the story cannot remain untold. Not because he seeks revenge, not because he wants fame, but because the public deserves to know what really happened behind the closed doors of Meghan's life. What is striking, however, is not just what Thomas says, but how he says it. There is a rawness in his voice, a mixture of sorrow, frustration, and exasperation. I was told to keep quiet, he says, to let the story pass, to pretend nothing happened. But you can't live with that kind of guilt forever. At some point, you have to speak. Thomas recounts incidents that, at the time, seemed minor but now take on a far more significant meaning. The private conversations, the unusual requests, the sudden tensions with family members, all of it now appears part of a larger puzzle, a puzzle he has been piecing together in silence. He hints at moments where he felt manipulated, controlled, and silenced. And he claims that some of these moments involve people who, outwardly, appeared to be allies or family. One particularly revealing story involves a phone call Thomas received shortly before Meghan's wedding. He describes a conversation with someone who claimed to represent the interests of the royal family. The message was clear: speak at your own peril. Any disclosure could jeopardize relationships, finances, and public perception. It was a warning dressed in civility, but to Thomas, it felt like a cage. It was like being told you could speak, but only if you wanted to ruin everything you cared about, he says. Despite these pressures, Thomas confesses that he was torn. He wanted to be there for his daughter, to celebrate her happiness, and to share in a milestone that should have been joyous. But every choice seemed fraught with danger. He describes sitting alone, wondering how one moment, one word, could cascade into a scandal the likes of which the world had never seen. And in the end, he felt trapped between doing what he thought was right for his daughter and protecting himself from forces beyond his control. But silence comes at a cost. Thomas admits that staying quiet for so long left him feeling isolated, angry, and misunderstood. People think I didn't care, that I was absent, that I abandoned my daughter, he explains. But it's not true. I cared so much it hurt. I just didn't know how to protect myself and her at the same time. This conflict has defined Thomas's public image. Every interview, every leaked story, every media appearance has been filtered through the lens of a man whose motives were questioned, mocked, or misrepresented. Yet he maintains that his silence was a form of protection, not just for Meghan, but for everyone involved. And now, with decades of reflection, he says it's time to reveal what he knows, to provide context, and to finally let the world hear his version of events. What Thomas shares is deeply personal. He discusses family dynamics, moments of betrayal, and interactions with Meghan that reveal a complex relationship. These aren't simple stories of love or conflict. They are a glimpse into the human side of a family thrust into global scrutiny. He talks about arguments that were misinterpreted by the media, gestures of care that went unnoticed, and warnings that were ignored. Perhaps most shocking are his revelations about the so-called insurance files. Thomas hints that Meghan's discussions of these files were not casual or inconsequential. He claims that the files contained sensitive information about the royal family, information that could have been used as leverage, protection, or even negotiation. He emphasizes that he never fully understood their scope until recently, when he heard Samantha's leaks and realized the full magnitude of what had been discussed in private. Thomas's perspective raises questions about trust, loyalty, and family obligation. How much should a parent reveal when their child is involved in high-stakes situations? When does silence become complicity? And how do you weigh the consequences of exposure against the potential fallout of keeping secrets? These are questions Thomas has wrestled with for years, and his answers are far from simple. Even as he opens up, Thomas acknowledges the contradictions in his story. He admits that he has made mistakes, that he has been inconsistent, and that some of his decisions may have hurt Meghan or others. But he stresses that his intentions were always shaped by a desire to protect, to prevent damage, and to navigate a world that few could understand. What emerges from Thomas's narrative is a portrait of a man caught between conflicting loyalties, between public perception and private reality, between truth and survival. He is at once sympathetic and flawed, a figure shaped by circumstance, pressure, and the weight of secrets. Because the most shocking details, the recordings, the claims, the confessions, are still coming. And when they surface, they threaten to upend not only public perception, but also the fragile sense of trust that exists within the family. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming.